My crazy fiancé demanded I invite my parents who abandoned me to our wedding. When I kept refusing, she took it upon herself to bring my sister to our house and then revealed a disgusting secret that made my heart break. My dad left when I was 4. My mom remarried. My stepdad told me at 6 years old that he'll never be my dad, and they always saw me as a burden. The day I turned 18, my mom woke me up with a suitcase full of my belongings and told me to leave. I have had no contact with them since. When I first met my fiancé, I told her about my family, but instead of being empathetic, she encouraged me to reconnect. When the wedding planning started, she kept saying I should invite my parents. I often explained how growing up unloved affected me, but she never listened. Just last night she said, "You know, if you don't invite your parents, I will. You just don't know what's best for you. You'll thank me for it in the long run." I immediately snapped. I told her if she couldn't respect what I've been through, then I don't want to marry her. But even then she kept trying to persuade me to invite them. I eventually walked out, grabbed my keys, and left. I came back around 11 p.m. after hanging with friends and slept on the couch. She left for work without a word to me. Update 1. My fiancé normally gets home around 5:30 p.m., so after I was done working, I work from home, I waited for her to show up. I got very worried when it was 6 and she still wasn't home, but around 6:15, she showed up with my half-sister, which was a big surprise. While my sister and I connect every Thursday, we live 45 minutes away from each other, so her popping by is not normal. Both of them looked very anxious, so I was very confused. I asked them what was going on, and my sister just burst into tears and said she's sorry. After like 5 minutes of her losing her shit, she starts talking about the family. So apparently when she told my mom and Dale, my stepdad, that I got engaged, it started a rift between them. Not because they cared about me, but about how my half-brother, who is 27, is still living at home, single with no steady job. If you're thinking, wow, they kicked you out at 18, but let him stay there past when he could rent a car, don't worry, I said it out loud. My mom apparently wants to do the same to my half-brother, but Dale won't let her. So they are currently separated, with my mom living with my family and refusing to come back until my half-brother is out of the house. For some reason that defies all logic and reason, my sister thinks getting an invite to my wedding will bring the family together, since it was my engagement that caused the rift. At this I blew up a bit. I told her that my engagement had nothing to do with it, that their shitty parenting and poor relationship skills caused it, and don't put that shit on me. She cried even harder, and this time I was not going to console her. My fiancé is just sitting there the whole time, so while my sister is trying to get herself together, I question my fiancé about this. She also tears up a bit but tells me my sister was telling her about how I always bring up the family on our Thursday, and that deep down, I wanted to repair the relationship. I asked how she could believe that when I was very clear that I was no contact with my family and had never mentioned wanting to be in contact. I told her that I tell her everything and would never hold back something like this without talking to her. She's always been my sounding board. When I switched jobs last year, we talked about it every night and her advice mattered more than anyone else. She apologized and then wanted to show me her phone, specifically the messages between her and my sister. At this point, my sister perks up and asks her not to show the phone conversation, but my fiancé tells her she's trying to save her relationship. My sister has just been straight up lying about our Thursday conversations, saying how I was always talking about reconciling, how I would never admit it but I'm partially at fault too, how I really want to see them all again. Every time I would tell my fiancé no, she would text my sister, and my sister would talk about how I just couldn't be open because I was embarrassed. Just completely false. I would be perfectly happy never seeing any of them again. I can't believe my sister still sees them. At this I tell my half-sister to leave, and that Thursdays are cancelled. My sister puts up a little bit of a fight, but I ignore her until she leaves. She keeps saying sorry over and over again, but honestly I'm done with her. I've blocked her and will be no contact with her for the time being. A complete betrayal of my feelings and relationships. As for my fiancé and I am still very upset. She went behind my back with my sister, never asked me about it, let my sister manipulate her and honestly hurt me. I told her I love her but my trust is broken. We've agreed to go to couples therapy and see if we can repair the relationship. I hope we can, but I'd say it's a toss-up for me. She's got a lot of work to do. Update 2. After the fallout from the revelations about my family and the trust issues with my fiancé, we decided to go to couples therapy as a last-ditch effort to salvage our relationship. The decision wasn't easy, but both of us knew that if we wanted to make this work, we had to address the core issues that had driven us apart. The first few sessions were incredibly tense. There was a lot of raw emotion and anger, particularly from me. I felt deeply betrayed by both my sister and my fiancé, and the therapy sessions became a space where I could openly express my hurt and frustration. My fiancé struggled to understand the full extent of the pain she had caused. She had been convinced by my sister's manipulative narrative and was grappling with her own feelings of guilt and regret. Our therapist helped us navigate these complex emotions. One of the key breakthroughs came when my fiancé admitted that she hadn't fully understood the depth of my trauma. She had assumed that inviting my parents might mend things, without truly appreciating how damaging that could be. Recognizing this was a significant step in rebuilding trust. Throughout the therapy, my fiancé worked hard to prove that she was committed to repairing our relationship. She took responsibility for her actions, including the secret conversations with my sister and the misguided attempts to push for family reconciliation. She also started to actively listen to my feelings and needs, without immediately jumping to fix things or offer solutions. On my end, I made an effort to communicate my boundaries clearly and work through my feelings of betrayal. I expressed how important it was for me to feel heard and respected, and that any future decisions regarding my family would need to be made with my full consent and understanding. Therapy provided a structured environment where we could discuss these issues without the immediate pressure of emotions clouding our judgment. We also worked on setting clear boundaries regarding our families, I made it clear that while I was open to discussing the situation, my family would not be part of our wedding. My fiancé understood and respected this boundary. We agreed that our wedding would be a celebration of our relationship and not a venue for unresolved family issues. As therapy progressed, we started to make noticeable improvements. We learned to communicate more effectively, to validate each other's feelings, and to approach conflicts with empathy and understanding. The process was slow and often painful, but it was also rewarding. We began to rebuild the trust that had been damaged and to rekindle the connection that had initially brought us together. By the time we reached the end of our therapy sessions, we had worked through many of the issues that had caused friction in our relationship. We decided that the wedding should proceed as planned, with the understanding that it would be a celebration of our union without the presence of my family. This decision was made with the agreement and support of both of us, and it felt like a healthy compromise given the circumstances. I am very excited to see what the future holds, but still look at it through the lens of caution. Update 3. The day of the wedding arrived with a mix of excitement and nervousness. I had hoped that the therapy sessions and our hard work would be rewarded with a beautiful and stress-free day. My fiancé and I had agreed that our wedding would be a celebration of our love, free from family drama. I was looking forward to a ceremony filled with joy and the start of our new life together. As I stood at the altar, dressed in my suit and surrounded by friends who had supported me through everything, I felt a sense of calm. My fiancée was beautiful as she walked down the aisle, and for a moment it felt like everything was going to be okay. The ceremony began, and everything seemed to be going as planned. The officiant spoke, and we exchanged our vows. I had spent a lot of time crafting my vows to be heartfelt and honest, and I was ready to share them. When it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath and started reading from the piece of paper I had prepared. I talked about our journey, the challenges we had overcome, and how much I loved her. But then, as I continued, I began to include something I hadn't planned on sharing. I spoke about the work we had done in therapy and the agreement we had reached to keep the wedding focused on us, without any interference from my family. As I said this, I noticed my fiancé's expression change. She looked anxious and uneasy. I then saw her glance toward the back of the venue. That's when I saw them, my mother and sister. They had somehow managed to get in, despite the boundaries we had set. My heart sank. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. This was supposed to be our day, not a platform for more family drama. I knew I had to address this. I didn't want to create a scene or embarrass anyone more than necessary, but I couldn't let this go unmentioned. I turned to the guests and said, "I'd like to take a moment to address something important. This day was meant to be a celebration of our love, and we worked hard to make sure it was free from family conflicts. However, it seems that despite our clear agreement, my mother and sister have been invited here today without my consent." There were murmurs among the guests, and I could see my fiancé's face turning red with shame and anger. I continued, "This is not how I envisioned this day. I need to honor my commitment to myself and my feelings, so in light of what has happened, I must step away from this ceremony." The silence was deafening. My fiancé's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out towards me, but I couldn't bring myself to meet her gaze. I felt like I had been betrayed by someone I trusted deeply, and the pain was too much to ignore. I turned and walked away from the altar, leaving her standing there, stunned and speechless. As I walked out of the venue, I felt a mixture of relief and heartbreak. I had hoped for a different outcome, but the violation of our agreement was too much for me to accept. I needed to step away, not just from the wedding, but from the relationship that had become tainted by dishonesty and betrayal. The aftermath of the wedding was chaotic. My fiancé tried reaching out to me multiple times, sending texts and calling, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. I felt a deep sense of betrayal and needed time to process what had happened. My mother and sister also reached out, sending messages and calling, but I ignored them as well. I wasn't ready to deal with them or the emotions they brought up. Days turned into weeks, and I remained in contact with neither my fiancé nor my family. I focused on myself, trying to heal from the emotional turmoil and confusion. I spent time with friends who had supported me and worked on moving forward. It was a difficult period, filled with mixed emotions and a lot of self-reflection. My fiancé eventually stopped trying to contact me, and my mother and sister seemed to have given up as well. I was left to rebuild my life and process the pain of the breakup and the family issues that had resurfaced. It was a lonely and challenging time, but I knew it was necessary for me to find peace and clarity. Looking back, I felt that I had made the right decision for myself. It wasn't easy, and there were many moments of doubt and regret, but ultimately, I had to stay true to my boundaries and protect my well-being. The wedding day that was supposed to mark the beginning of a new chapter became a turning point in my life, leading me to confront painful truths and make difficult choices. I continued to work on myself and my relationships with friends, and although it was hard, I began to see a path forward. I knew that healing would take time, but I was committed to finding a new sense of balance and peace in my life. The journey wasn't over, but I was determined to move forward with strength and resilience, no matter how challenging the road ahead might be.